Alright, welcome to another Dissident Dumbass of the Week award. This week it'll be Theora Apolopoulos, otherwise known as Ken Wheeler. And it's the radiometer, which is a recent subject of some interest. Good for conversation about the whole idea of thermodynamics and the nature of what photons are. And there are a lot of really good videos on the subject, most especially this one from, I found most especially interesting, from way back in 1960 whatever, called PSSC, The Pressure of Light. These are really good old videos of experiments and pretty much detailing much of the phenomenon. The modern explanation is a little more complex than the one provided, but the same idea basically, and recognizing that it doesn't work in a complete vacuum, and these different factors that are really important to understanding the phenomenon. And but many of them do say that it's not really measuring the pressure of light, and clearly it is. Light's the only energy being put in, and it's clearly you get an action out, and it's the light that's causing it. So to say it's not real just because it's more complicated than just a knee jerk, it's a more complicated reflex. The fact is that's the energy that's producing the effect. It's not burning something, it's not destroying something, so there's no storage where it's releasing some battery's energy. So obviously the energy is in the form of the photons creating the effect, and that's, in my opinion, kind of undeniable. But explaining it is the interesting part, and explaining how you can capitalize on energy, by creating this imbalance in reaction. So anyway, obviously Ken Wheeler's video is not going to be what it claims to be. So it says, first time ever seen. I'm sure it wasn't the first time done. Secret of light, 140-year-old mystery solved, he says. Crookes radiometer. So I'm sure none of that happened. 1,100,000 views for Ken Wheeler crap experiment. And all these other videos that were much better experiments have much fewer views. So just the world is horribly unfair. But anyway, let's on to the video and such.
Okay.
No ad on this old video, 3 years
Show
ago.
you something that you've never seen before. This is a Crookes radiometer. You've seen that before. Obviously, it's been around for ages. But let me show you something first, and then let me explain to you something really important that I guarantee you do not know. Now, I'm just using high capacitance, purple, i.e. blue in spectrum light.
So he's got a little tiny LED, right? Little toy one, button batteries, just, garbage.
Just bring up the Crookes radiometer. This is a very low intensity LED.
Yes.
Not touching the radiometer. You see it spinning up?
So, incredible. First time ever seen. Somebody stupid enough to do it with really weak light sources. So, yes, first time that's been seen.
Now, let's take a look at blue in spectrum. This is blue in spectrum, the purple was, but this is a less intense light source. Nothing. What about green or red? You would get absolutely nothing.
Right, and the obvious point to make again is that when red light is a component, let's say, of white light, there's an equal kind of amounts of the colors. And the red spectrum light has a long wavelength, that is, it's long, twice as big. Between the nodes, if you were going to be a wave person, the nodes of the waves have a wavelength, distance, and it's twice as long, which means there's half as many per amount of time that something will be exposed to. So theoretically, in white light, the energy that comes from the red portion of the white light is half as much total energy as the energy in the blue portion, because it has the much tighter wavelength, more bullets, more nodes per moment of time. That would be the simple explanation for why there's a progressive difference, linear difference, between the red effect on the device and the blue effect on the device.
Nothing whatsoever. This is bright, all same intensity.
So clearly they're not all the same intensity, in the sense that obviously if one person is shooting bullets 1 a second, another person is shooting them 1 every half second, and they both have 100 bullets, the person shooting them every half second will run out of bullets twice as fast as the other guy. So obviously it is an intensity argument. You can't avoid the intensity argument based on the fact that the frequency is a component of intensity.
Purple light. Starts to spin up again. Not very fast, but this is a low intensity LED.
Yes, they're low intensity, exactly. So obviously the ones you're using are too low. You can barely turn it with the purple, so why would you have an expectation that you can turn it any with something half as strong, in terms of half as many photons, nodes?
LED, but it's very high capacitance.
Which is just a nonsense word. Photons don't have a capacitance. Photons don't store energy.
The red LED, same intensity, will never spin it up, nor will the blue. I'm about to tell you something really important.
So he just stated something that's just plainly not true. They will. You just need a bigger source. So again, it's just a nonsense claim. It's not true. It's provably wrong. It can be found in these other videos to be wrong. The device is thermally sensitive. If you cool the glass, it will spin the opposite direction, indicating that it's pretty much about a big function of this device has to do with infrared radiation.
Really important here. Let me turn all the lights on, and I'm going to come right back and tell you what's going on, okay? Something that you had no idea about. And right now, I'm going to take a dump on all the ideas that you thought that you understood.
Taking a dump is about all you're good for. Yes, dumping. You're a very good dumper, as you appear to be.
About modern science. This device is so simple, you can mail order one from eBay, $5 or $6. It's basically just two things. It's not even vacuum sealed, although this one might be. On the end of this needle is
although this one might be. Yes, they're always vacuum sealed. It won't work without a vacuum. So again, just nonsense. He didn't bother researching this at all before making the video. He's just this pompous, arrogant, misinformation. Just, bend the truth to his philosophy without and again, just doing these insanely amateurish experiments. They're so badly done that if, you can't give any credibility to any of this, the conclusions you draw from these horrible experiments he does.
a little glass vial, of which are attached little veins of metals, coated white on one side, black on the other. Playing by a real high-intensity light, it'll start spinning up. This isn't that high intensity, but you can see what's going on. You're like, oh, okay, well, this is boring. Well, hold on, I'm getting to the good part, okay? We think we're so advanced with our 5-core processors. And look, I was #1 for 2 years running on Apple for answering tech support on the MacBook Air. We think we're so advanced. Look at this. This is today. This is not, yesteryear. These are all the theories about how the Crookes radiometer works.
And apparently you didn't read any of them. So you show the theories and you don't read any of the material, because it's clear the material would have demonstrated to you the whole argument about how much weak vacuum versus strong vacuum, how that affects the experiment. So you obviously didn't pay any attention.
Many theories. You see, this is a simple thing, which is more simple than a damn saltine cracker. Modern science. Oh, we've got particle accelerators in France, and we've got the Hubble telescope, and
So he thinks it's so simple. Well, it's obviously not that simple, because there is this whole question about how energy radiates, and especially off of surfaces, and R factors, which are insulating factors and conducting factors. And so you could almost do an experiment where you paint anything black on one side and reflective on another side, and then heat it and see how much energy comes out of one side versus the other side, and that might be enough to explain the what's happening right there, because thermally the black side might radiate infrared radiation more readily.
No, we're so advanced. No, we're not. Modern science has still not come to a conclusion as to how the hell this works. No.
Right, modern science is wrong, but you're not right, so that's the problem here. His alternative to their mistakes is to make even bigger mistakes. So he's replacing bad science with worse science. And that's all that's taking place here. So yes, bad on conventional science for having such weakly evidenced declarations of the truth. They jump to conclusions way before they have enough evidence to jump to them. So they're weakly evidenced and often, I'd say, plainly wrong. And so they open the door to this kind of slop. By doing a bad job, they allow somebody who can do a worse job to get the job.
Believe me, don't give a damn. Go research it for yourself.
Yeah, I did. 10 minutes research. I found all kinds of, much more thoroughly done experiments than yours. And they were done 60, 70 years ago.
There are thermodynamic explanations, which, kind of seems logical that, if you turn it on the white, you can actually stop it, but if you point it towards the black, it starts to spin up, and be like, well, it's heat. Black heats up faster, and therefore that's why it starts to spin.
Well, again, so heats up faster. Is that a scientific term, is it? The point is they're photons and they're hitting, and so there's this argument about the idea that a reflection is twice as much energy as an absorption. But that's because people don't really think about what absorption is. Absorption, when you have thermodynamic equilibrium, that is, once you're already heated, like say the Earth for example, the Earth has to give back everything it receives. So any energy that hits the Earth doesn't really get absorbed for any amount of time, but a temporary amount of time, because it doesn't keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. So it's not storing any more energy. It's like the battery is full. Once the battery's full, you can't pump more juice into it. It just can't do it. It won't go in. Now with the Earth it does go in, but it just comes back out again. So in a sense, although the Earth looks like it's absorbing energy, it's really a perfect mirror to energy. Every bit of energy that goes into it bounces back out somewhere. So, it requires a little bit of deeper thought to understand that the black surface isn't absorbing any more energy, quote unquote, than the silver surface. It's just as mirror, because whatever hits it will have to be radiated back out unless you're going to heat it up. And again, heating it up means you heat it up to an equilibrium temperature, and that's as high as it's going to go.
Spin in the direction of the applied light. There have been mechanical explanations, especially...
See, photons have to be understood that they just never die. So once you know that a photon can't be killed, that it's always got to be living somewhere. It's somewhere in space all the time. So if it goes into something, you just have to look and you'll find out where it's going out of something, unless that something is like a battery, or like something that's getting warmer and warmer and warmer, or like something that's moving faster and faster and faster. It's always got to be in some form.
Especially these particle idiots that think, well, it's actually light beating on the black veins and, pressing it, pressing against a car or something. Thermodynamic explanation, black body radiations, force explanation.
So again, he thinks it's silly to think of it as little bits hitting it, little tiny bits of sand moving at a speed of light or whatever, but it's much more rational to start talking about some kind of coaxial cable that travels through the glass and hits the thing, and then somehow, I don't know what the coaxial cable does after that. How's the light reflect like a coaxial cable? I mean, it just doesn't. Is that a rational explanation that makes sense to somebody?
Pressure explanations. This device has been around for a long time, the Crookes radiometer. Science has still not figured out how this works. I, however, have, and I'm the first person in the world who has. And the reason I have is because this fat bald tattoo freak you see in front of you, who's a genius, chess champion.
Oh yeah, who's a genius? Yeah, it's right. Genius like Donald Trump. Like you can fool all of the people some of the time, and some of the people all the time, and that's all you're demonstrating. Is that yes, people are fools, and they'll eat bad food.
High school and college. Translate ancient Greek for fun. I literally wrote the book on magnetism, and I'm the first person.
So, yes, you literally wrote a book that has the title, the word magnetism in the title, but that's all you did. You didn't write a book that's in any way comprehensible or in any way describes why magnets attract and magnets repel. There's absolutely no explanation for why it happens at all. What the physical effect is that forces the atoms apart or forces the atoms together. No explanation whatsoever.
Person to accurately tell you what light is. It's a coaxial circuit. It's not merely transverse electromagnetic.
Right, it's transverse electromagnetic, so he thinks it's this waving crap, whatever that means, in whatever fake fields. Fields of what, Ken? Waving in fields of what? And it's coaxial, so it's waving and it's coaxial. Makes no sense at all.
It has a longitudinal dielectric. In Mother Nature, she's a really...
There's the longitudinal dielectric means absolutely nothing. A dielectric is a kind of insulator. How's the light matter? It's not an insulator.
Really, really simple gal. Okay, she's not an insane hooker on crack, as quantum mechanics would have you.
Right, and everything you talk about is just nonsense, drivel, gobbledygook, words crammed together. Verbiage, diarrhea,
She believes she only understands two co-principles: force and motion, and inertia and acceleration. The entire universe is...
it's more nonsense. Just I'll say the words, but I won't explain what the hell they mean. So he doesn't think inertia has something to do with velocity. He thinks it's some other thing. And yes, clearly things are accelerated, but why are they accelerated? That's right, because something hits them.
This is resistance, capacitance, permeability, magnetism, permittivity.
Just more nonsense words. Both concepts never measured in any real experiment ever. No such thing, for space.
Electricity. Okay. Well, what about that? It means the explanation for this is 100% correct based upon everything.
All right. So he hasn't even given us an explanation. He's saying it's 100% correct. So he's just claiming, look, my explanation is completely correct. I haven't given it to you yet, but yes, it's correct.
That I know about magnetism, which is complete, and everything that I know about light, which is also complete.
So just bold talk by a tattooed fat man. That's what are you going to say? It's just bold talk. Where's the product? Where does he ever prove anything he claims? How many times has he made a video promising us, oh, tomorrow we're coming out with some new technology, it's going to revolutionize something? Never happens. Does a half of an experiment and says, what do you think's causing this effect, as if he has the knowledge of what it is, and then he never makes the part 2 to the video. He never explains, he never gives us the punchline to his joke. Because that's what it is, it's a joke. He had a wrong notion in his head, he figures out, oh, that was a stupid thing I was thinking, and then he never makes the follow-up video because, yeah, he figures out that, oh, my punchline isn't going to be funny.
There's no such thing as the speed of light. There's a rate of induction. The maximum rate of...
Again, irrelevant distinction. Rate of induction. I could say, okay, a Maserati has a rate of induction of, 120 miles an hour. I mean, what's the point of just playing silly games with the words, right? So all these Ken Wheeler fans, do you see some kind of rational point? Is that what you do when you talk to people? Is you use jargon and pretend that you're using some new concept when you're basically saying exactly the same thing? right? Rate of induction doesn't mean anything different than the speed it's going to move at. So why use some other word? Why play a game that it doesn't have a speed when you know that's exactly what it is? It ends up being its speed. I was looking for the number of likes and dislikes, but it's not listed for some dopey reason.
Transverse field phenomena through a medium. That medium, of course, being the ether. There's no such thing as warp space-time. Einstein was incorrect on this.
Yes, that's true, but there's no such thing as an ether either. It's just taking bad ideas and replacing it with a worse idea.
There is no premise to back this up. It's dielectric acceleration, which we call gravity's dielectric acceleration. The same thing that you...
So again, dielectric acceleration doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything in an exact technical way. And I guess to these idiots who don't even know what dielectric is, I don't know how it could possibly mean anything to them. But a dielectric is a physical substance. There is no dielectricity. Okay? A dielectric is a kind of conductor.
That you saw. See, science, by the way, has no idea. There's a famous quote from Tesla that goes, if you want to understand the universe, you need to think in terms of frequency and wavelength. And, of course, correct on that.
Right, and Tesla spent millions of dollars to burn holes in the ground. Tesla had a really wrong idea. He thought he could transmit energy through the ground, which is the neutralizing medium. It sucks up anything high or anything low and turns it into its neutral. And Tesla had just a wrong idea, and you want to pretend it was the right idea, but no, the history has proved it was the wrong idea. No one's been able to make that work because it can't be done, because it's just a wrong idea of how electricity works.
People quote Tesla on that all the time, but they have no idea what the hell Tesla's saying. He's not simply saying frequency and wavelength. What he's talking about is capacitance. He's talking about...
Well, then why wouldn't he say capacitance if that's what he was talking about? So isn't that nice? So now you can put words in Tesla's mouth, right? Oh no, Tesla was really the inventor of the flux capacitor. Blah blah. No, he wasn't.
The nature of that. You actually change, given a inertia or field perturbation. When you change the wavelength, when you change the frequency, you change the capacitance, you change the power. What?
Again, just more nonsense. Quite obviously, as stated, if you change how close the nodes are together, you can fit more in a given amount of time. It's all moving the same speed, so as you move things closer together, there's more of them in a specific amount of time, which has the appearance of more energy. The bullets themselves don't have more energy because you fire them more quickly. There's the same speed coming out of the gun, same impact capacity for each bullet. It's just that there's more bullets. Duh. Not complicated. Again, he still hasn't explained the radiometer, the subject of this video. He's just pontificating on crap he knows nothing about.
What happens when you think you go towards the red end of the spectrum out in the sun? Well, you're going to get a sunburn, not too bad. You start heading towards the blue end of the spectrum, whereas where all the dangerous crap is, X-rays, everything else, that's when it'll kill you in a heartbeat. There's more capacitance.
It won't kill you in a heartbeat, so again, that's just an exaggeration. But clearly, so again, if just from the being a moron, morons will say, okay, I'll just go based on this intensity argument. That's the only argument. But the real truth is that it's even a little subtly more complicated than that, in the sense that electrons need to be perturbated. Okay, they need to be disturbed because they're in tension, and to do certain things to the electron, you have to hit it with a certain frequency, not just any frequency.
Per dielectric pulse in the longitudinal coaxial nature of light than there is towards the red end of the spectrum, okay? I'll sit here all day long with a blue end spectrum, LED, won't turn. Red,
He just said blue won't turn, which is backwards, of course.
I'll sit here until I drop dead. It's not going to turn. I bring up the higher capacitance, the threshold. Each one of these little veins.
So again, he's saying the blue wouldn't turn it. Of course, it's more likely than the red. Again, just because of the frequency, the number of bullets. Total bullets will be more. Obviously, the more bullets you shoot at something, the bigger the hole you'll blow in it. 10 bombs make a bigger bomb than one bomb. I mean, just kind of obviously.
Of a certain mass. This is not some serious output out of this little tiny LED. It's not much. But the veins will start to turn. only with a higher capacitance light.
Right, and barely turn. So again, it's just quite obvious that he's right at the threshold of making a turn when he's using blue light. So of course the red won't make a turn. Duh. But if he used a higher intensity red, it would turn, no problem. And it'll turn half the speed of the blue because there's about half as many nodes in the red light as there is in the blue light. Duh.
Now, this is a fact. You don't believe me? These are all still the current theories on how this simple device works. This device is more simple than a saltine cracker. It is perched on a needle that works as basically a low friction bearing to allow these little vanes to spin with applied light. Now, building something and reproducing something, easy. Any chimp can do it. Explaining something is where wisdom and true intellect comes into play.
Right, and he's pretending he's doing this fakery in the name of the truth and good science. He's plainly wrong. He's plainly inaccurate, and it's just it's an obscenity committed. It's a crime against human intelligence. This guy is a criminal. He's a criminal against intelligence and against the truth.
See, anybody can observe phenomena, like the idiot Einstein. He won a Nobel Prize for the photoelectric effect. By the way,
yeah, well, he certainly didn't do this nonsense. He didn't sit there with, a completely inadequate experiment. He didn't do rubbish like this.
This device, I'm going to tell you how it works in a second, works the exact same way the photoelectric effect works, as incorrectly explained by Einstein. Well, Einstein won a Nobel.
Right, so he's claiming it's an effect that he claims was inaccurately described. Does that make any sense? So he's claiming yes, it's exactly the effect that I claim doesn't happen. No, that doesn't make any sense.
Nobel Prize. Yeah, you know what that means? That means one idiot, moron, tried to explain something, and that explanation was accepted by a lot of other people who patted him on the back and gave him a Nobel Prize for something that he didn't deserve. Correct.
Right, and he didn't deserve it. Why? Because he didn't do an experiment that demonstrated that electrons, to be removed from atoms to create ions, you have to use high-intensity light. And that indicated to them at the time, because they didn't really understand photons, and they still don't, and Einstein admitted 2 years before he died, I've spent 50 years analyzing photons, and I haven't improved my knowledge one iota. I mean, that's his quote from 2 years before he died. So clearly he found this troubling, all of this. And this guy's ridiculing him for that honesty.
Observations which are reproducible does not have any bearing on the explanation for that phenomena. This is a huge error in science. Huge error in science. Academic.
And this is exactly the error you're making. You're doing. They do some sloppy science. They jump too fast to a conclusion, and you do exactly the same thing, even worse. I mean, you're just such a hypocrite, a duplicitous, stinking hypocrite.
Hubris is so. What's your PhD at? Just your PhD. You're saying you know more than people have. You know what a PhD in peer review means? PhD in peer reviewed means that you kiss a bunch of assholes of people above you, you agree with their crap, and all those people did was agree with.
No, you do a little bit of the research where you actually read the papers that you're pointing to, and then you would know exactly that this is completely vacuum dependent, this experiment, that you can't have a full vacuum, can't have no vacuum. It's got to be the right amount of vacuum, which indicates that this is a subtle phenomenon. That's, fundamentally I would argue that it has to do with the fact that people aren't recognizing that one surface, the silver surface, is reflecting ultraviolet light. The blue end spectrum light is being reflected as blue light, and on the black surface the blue light goes in and red light comes out. So that's the difference in the experiment. That's the difference between the two sides. One side is thermally constipated, in the sense that the red light has a less likelihood of getting through the small amount of molecules still in the vessel. So when the red light hits a molecule, it excites the atom and moves it, where when the ultraviolet light hits it, it goes through it. It is transmitted through the molecule.
Agree with crap before then. It is a giant circle jerk of stupidity, ignorance, and hubris. H-U-B-R-I-S. Hubris. Academic.
See, I mean, heat always has to be understood as photons. So it's like even in an electric circuit. You wonder, well, where does the electricity go? Well, the electricity either moves something, are chemically moves things, in the sense that it goes into a battery into creating chemistry. So it either moves molecules in terms of moving chemical elements, or it moves something physical, big, or, okay, it's heat. And in every case, it's still photons. The electricity is still the electricity. Heat is a form of electricity. Heat is photons. The electricity was photons moving between electrons. It's always in the form of photons. All energy is in some way or another in the form of a thing, a little corpuscle moving the speed of light.
Hubris is the gigantic, disgusting cancer that sits inside the brains and the eyeballs in modern science. All these people...
Yes, that's you. You are a horrible polyp in the colon of humanity.
What do is parrot one idiot before them. And no invention, no creativity, nothing.
And you're a coward, okay? He's a terrible coward. He won't answer to anybody. He claims he's won debates. He's never had a debate. He's never subjected himself to any testing. He's a coward, a despicable coward who's afraid to be confronted on his bullshit. I will take on any comer. You want to be, I'll make a live room and you can make your accusations, as long as you're willing to make them as an accountable person, not a troll. Go ahead. Take your shots. This coward won't do that. This despicable coward who's just like conventional science is running from the test. He's afraid to defend his nonsense.
Is discovered new unless you start to think outside of the box and you stop kissing the ass of people before you that didn't know anything and people before them. The way this device works is the same way the photoelectric effect works.
Okay, so he just claimed that Einstein was wrong about the photoelectric effect, and now he's just using it as a generic term. What is the photoelectric effect, Ken Willie? Why don't you explain it to us? Because clearly their interpretation of it at the time, I think, is a little bit silly, in the sense that they were considering a whole photon, that is many nodes of a ray light, as something called a photon, and claiming that it somehow had a greater quanta of energy as a burst of energy. Well, and clearly it's not a burst of energy, it's a series of hits, bullets. And the clear thing to understand is that this is a tension argument. This is a tipping point argument. Electrons have to be tipped out of their orbit. That is, you have to put a certain amount of impulses in before they can rebound to get enough energy out for the electron to push out. So it's just like you loading a spring. You have to push a certain depth on the spring if you want to be able to shoot something out of it, like a little spring gun or something. If you don't compress the spring all the way back, the little bead won't fly out of the gun.
It was discovered that there's a certain threshold frequency of light that caused the buildup between the cathode and the anode of electrostatic buildup.
Cathode and anode of electrostatic buildup. So again, there's no such thing as a cathode and an anode of electric buildup. There's electrons and protons. What kind of nonsense is this? Cathode and anode of static buildup. There's no cathodes and anodes. Cathodes and anodes are things you heat. You heat something so electrons are sprayed off of it. That's what a cathode and anodes are about. It's merely heating a metal surface, and the heat ejects electrons.
Okay. Now Einstein's explanation for that was 100% incorrect, but since I understand exactly what light is, and I understand that Mother Nature's a really simple gal, she only works in force and motion, inertia and acceleration, resistance, capacitance, permeability, and permittivity. Everything's force and motion, inertia and acceleration. The way this works, and...
This is just more blah, 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 blah. You know, this wasn't about creating a photodetector, okay? A cathode and anode you could use to create a photomultiplier even, where you have a voltage across something. You don't even, the reason that they had a voltage across it was merely so they could detect the electrons. They had to detect when they got ejected. So they get ejected whether you have an anode and cathode. Regardless of whether there exists an anode or cathode, you're still going to eject the electrons.
the way, the reason why the higher capacitance light towards the blue end of the spectrum, but a little further than blue, where's the purple here, why this begins to spin up only. This is low emission LED here. Why it only begins.
So again, this is something he could have just done a little bit of research and would have found out that this has nothing to do with it, okay? That it's just about the fact that you're way below the intensity level required to move it. And that the red light doesn't have as much intensity as the blue light in just the raw fact that it's the same amount of rays of light over time, and because of the longer frequency, that means fewer nodes, half as many. And so it's just, you just didn't expose it to enough light.
The spin up with a higher capacitance than ever with the red or the green, or even the blue, because this is low output, is because what is actually going on is that there is...
So again, you can see it's just so obvious. I mean, he can barely move it with the violet light. Barely move it. And yet he has an expectation that the red's going to work. Silly expectation, easily known to be irrelevant to this experiment.
Is an electrostatic buildup.
And he says, first time ever seen. It's just nonsense. And again, there's been experiments done by just cooling the glass. All they have to do is spray cold air on the glass and it'll spin the opposite way, clearly indicating what do you think is being transmitted from the surface of the glass to the fins. What kind of radiation do you think is being transmitted? Well, the only kind of radiation that possibly can be transmitted is the infrared range that's being absorbed when you cool the surface, therefore not reflected.
And a discharge against the medium. It is no difference than a magnetic repulsion. It is a force repulsion against inertia.
So a magnetic repulsion, he says. I mean, obviously magnetism has to be made out of a force that obviously is moving the same speed as light. So again, it's kind of obvious that it's photons again. It's all photons. It's all, in one form or another, little force bits moving the speed of light. The speed of force.
The reason that black vein, obviously the white light is reflecting.
That's why magnetism turns into electricity, is because it already, in a sense, is electricity. It's a force moving the speed of light. And it slows down when it's turned into electricity a little bit because it now has to communicate between the electrons. The photons are the force that makes the electrons repel each other. They're the things bouncing between the electrons. Those are what the photons are. That's the electricity.
Okay. Doesn't matter what frequency the light is, obviously. The white light works the same thing with the flashlight. You bring it towards the white end of the vein, it'll stop. You point it towards the black end of the vein, it'll start to speed up. Okay, well that's perfectly understood. Obviously, that's been understood now for well over 100 years regarding this simple device.
Right, and the reason why that works, though, wasn't very well understood. And it wasn't until they played with the experiment, that is, made the vacuum more perfect or less perfect and different things, and then they can figure out through deduction what the solution to the problem is. And it's subtle, and again, I would argue that there can be some disagreements about the exact mechanism, but it's clearly thermodynamic in the sense that it requires some interactions between atmospheric atoms and the surfaces.
The white light is obviously reflecting most of the light, so it starts to halt. You bring it towards the black end of the vein, it will start to speed up. Speed up there, point it towards the white, it'll halt. It's like applying the brakes on a car. So that's obviously understood. Reflectance. That's capacitance. The black paint...
No, it's not understood. Well, obviously, if you could if you shoot the light at only one surface, clearly, yes, you're just going to be pushing on the one surface with the photons. But I don't think... I think you'd have to use a laser to be able to move it by hitting the silver side. So I don't think that's true. What he said, I don't.
It's just metal little veins. It has higher capacitance, and when that capacitance threshold is breached, what happens is it sets up.
So just more nonsense. A capacitance threshold is breached. How do you draw a picture of that? Well, draw me the veins and show me the breaching of capacitance, whatever the hell that is. Just gibberish.
A forced discharge, like causing basically an electrical explosion. In some people's minds, they're unable to think in simple terms. I'm going to simplify.
So electrical explosion. Yes, I'm supposed to think what? Oh yeah, electrical explosion. I totally understand. Electrical explosion is like. No, I can't. Yeah, sorry. Draw me a picture. It doesn't have to be a great picture. You can use chalk. Just anything. Just give me a vague outline of what an electric explosion looks like.
analogy. What you're doing is you're creating a force discharge, a miniature electrical explosion, if you will, obviously incredibly small.
So again, a force discharge, just jargon, jargon, jargon. Photons go in. One side seems to be doing something different than the other side thermodynamically. That is, somehow the energy is creating more of an effect on one side than it's creating on the other side, and that's what he hasn't explained at all. He didn't solve any 100-year, 40-year-old mystery here at all.
A discharge of that black vein against the point of inertia. No different than what you would...
The point of inertia, so there's an explosion next to the point of inertia, and somehow the idiots, the 1 million people that watch this piece of turd video, know what the fuck that means. They're just all liars, clearly. Only a liar, you'd have to lie, okay, to say you know what the hell that means. There was an electrical explosion near the point of inertia. Draw me a picture. One of these million people, please draw me a picture, you liar.
Ignorantly called magnetic repulsion. So yes, this little simplex device has been around now for ages. I was about to say.
Simplex, again, just keeps using these words. Obviously, it's a little bit sophisticated. You know, this is physics. Physics isn't just, oh, that looks like. That's not physics. Physics is, it's always a little more complicated. The true story's a little more complicated than the butler did it.
Say eons. I mean, this device has only been around for a long time. You know, nobody's ever done this experiment with the Crookes radiometer. Why? Because nobody understands light. They don't.
So again, he states something that just isn't a fact. I'm sure plenty of people have used different kinds of light, so it's just a lie.
Don't. We think we do. We don't. Light has higher capacitance. It's more dangerous. We know towards the blue end of the spectrum, light becomes, of course, you know, light becomes invisible. At that end of the spectrum, it falls on.
Yeah, well, see, the invisible part is the interesting one. So I was thinking about that, and you know, the photo multiplier, which is part of the original photo cell, actually, in Einstein's photoelectric effect, in the sense that it seems that you probably could make a photo multiplier that was capable of seeing a much larger range of radiation. Certainly would pick up X-rays and ultraviolet light, and I'm sure it will pick up infrared photons. Now the question of whether it would pick up microwaves is the one that's interesting to me. So, but it just seems to me that it may well be that you can create a photomultiplier that is sensitive to radio frequencies.
Outside the visible range of human vision, light becomes dangerous towards that end of the spectrum. Why do you think light becomes dangerous towards that end of the spectrum? Blue light's evil, you know, that's where the bad stuff is.
It's like saying, why is a machine gun more dangerous than a Colt 45? Oh, because more bullets come out.
Stuff happens. Towards the red light, you get a sunburn, you get a suntan. You know, you get a suntan, you're actually talking about thermal. Higher capacitance, smaller frequency. This is the case if people don't understand electricity.
So again, my argument would be that the reason is more subtle than that and has to do with resonant frequencies. And resonant frequencies store energy. So when you add energy to a system, in the sense that you add your energy when the system is moving in the direction you're going to add the energy, then it adds. If you try to add energy when the system is moving in the opposite direction, you destroy the energy. Destroy, in a sense, convert it into something that's going to leave in some other direction. So you're not going to be adding to the system's energy. And that's the key to why electrons are ejected, is because at a high frequency you keep adding energy because it never tips back. So you load the spring. It's like pushing the spring and then letting it go, and then pushing the spring and letting it go. If you push at a fast enough rate, then the spring will be more compressed than if you push slowly and let the spring move back, and then push and then let the spring move back. The argument's that simple. The truth is that simple.
The smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. This is why blue end spectrum light is more powerful, more dangerous. It's the same reason why when I apply high capacitance light towards the black vein of this Crookes radiometer, it starts to speed up. Well, I won't do that at all if I apply the red light. You sit there all day long with the red light, it's not going to spin.
So you didn't try it all day long, I bet, either, right? So it might be worth trying it all day long.
Well, believe me, you can try this experiment for yourself. This device, there's still no agreement on how it works. There is 2 huge pages on the theories on how the hell this device works. This device, we got particle accelerators.
There's a lot more than 2 whole pages. So again, he's not even giving us a citation to what pages he's talking about. What, Wikipedia? There's a lot more than Wikipedia out there.
The Hubble telescope, computers that are yin-yang, the iPhone, if you take the iPhone back 100 years, people would think that it was a magical device. It was so neat, and I would say it does tons and tons of stuff. We are very intelligent, but we're not very wise. We are advanced in certain areas, but we're incredibly ignorant as to the mechanics of...
Yeah, and the reason why we're ignorant is because of dopes like you fakers, you frauds, people who don't do the real experiment, don't pay attention to the real history, make up a bunch of crap, put words in Tesla's mouth, pretend he said things he didn't say, pretend he had ideas he didn't have, and don't take any account for all the wrong ideas he had. They're just overtly wrong.
It's Mother Nature. So I've been the first person in the world.
I mean, you quote mine reality to serve your purpose as a religious kook. Your agenda physics, agenda science. And that's the worst thing somebody can do, is to have an agenda.
World to show to you and explain to you demonstrably and reproducibly how this Crookes radiometer works, and it is 100% in line with...
Right, so again, he didn't solve anything, he didn't explain anything, didn't even explain how the ejected electrons, where the evidence of them is, why they wouldn't just end up going back to the surface, how the energy actually somehow is disproportionately affecting the 2 surfaces, why the electrons aren't ejected from the silver side just as readily as they're ejected from the black side. Why is there a difference in how they're ejected? So he didn't even explain why the photoelectric effect would affect the black surface more than the silvered surface.
With everything I've ever said about magnetism and the coaxial, why is a coaxial circuit? The coaxial...
And more nonsense. A coaxial circuit. A coaxial cable means you have 2 cables. You have one cable and a shield of another cable. How is light anything like that?
Coaxial nature of light. Smaller space, higher capacitance towards the...
No capacitance. Photon is a photon is a photon is a photon. They don't have different capacitances.
In the spectrum we got higher capacitance.
They don't store energy. They are energy. They don't store energy. Capacitance is the ability to, just like the word indicates, capacity, the ability to fill it, the ability to store.
This Crookes radiometer, these 4 vanes have a certain mass that needs to be breached for them to start to spin, of course.
So they have mass that needs to be breached. Draw me a picture of that. What's a breaching of the mass? I mean, this is just jargon. Nonsensical, irrational jargon. You might as well be doing some frickin', Catholic Church Latin crap. Well, let me do a sermon in a language nobody understands.
Shaking the table and they're vibrating, because they're basically sitting on a near 0 friction glass bearing there, but there's a certain mass that needs to be overcome for them to start to spin. And
a certain mass that needs to be overcome. So again, he uses the word inertia all the time, and yet he doesn't seem to understand that, no, you have to overcome its inertia. Okay, the fact that it already has a movement in space, and that you're going to change its movement, that means you have to move the mass. That means you have to force the mass to move. The electrons and protons have to somehow be forced to change their location.
the blue light's the same intensity as the purple, and the green's the same intensity as the purple, and the red's the same intensity as the purple.
Right, they're obviously not the same intensity in the sense that their nodes are half as much. It's going to change the intensity just innately because you have twice as much in the same amount of time.
So why is it only the purple at higher capacitance light will cause it to spin? It's the same luminal velocity, it's the same luminal intensity as the red, the green, and the blue. So why?
So it's not the same. So again, where did you even do that test? Where did you test the lumens? Oh, that's right, you didn't.
Only the purple. Because the capacitance threshold has been breached to set up a magnetic centrifugal discharge where
A magnetic centrifugal discharge was set up by something and is affecting something, yet he can't draw me a picture of this centrifugal dischargey thingy. So we get no diagrams, nothing to go on, just jargon.
The thing is actually repelling against the point of inertia. It is actually breaching that threshold capacitance.
It's breaching threshold capacitance. So again, just more babble. So the photons have capacitance, the surfaces have capacitance. No explanation of how the silver side has a different capacitance than the black side, nothing.
That is how this device works. And I'm the first person in the world to show you and tell you why.
Right, so he showed nothing. It's a complete garbage, childish, immature, silly experiment done so imperfectly and incorrectly and without any appreciation for an obligation to do it right, not wrong.
It works. It's logical, it's reproducible, it's accurate, and it's irrefutable.
So again, it's completely refuted by lots of documentation, better videos, better experiments, completely refuted, complete nonsense, big fat lie is all it is, and just completely insulting human intelligence by making noises and pretending your noises are intelligence.
Complain and bitch all you want.
Yeah, right, and you'll not pay any attention to anybody complaining or bitching that you're a liar and a deceiver, you're a dishonest, ignorant fool preaching a religion. And you should be called on it, but you're too much of a coward to be called on it.
But my explanation is logical and correct. The rest of these have no...
No, it's putrid garbage, and for some reason the human race is, like you, a mess. And so they find you endearing in some bizarre, perverse way, like the ugly dogs they choose to have. So they just don't care about the truth. They want their reality fat and ugly.
Basis in reality whatsoever. You understand Mother Nature and how she works. She's really simple. Some of the most complex.
So again, really simple, like coaxial cable photons moving in two fields. Yeah, it's really simple.
The things irreducibly right underneath the surface are incredibly simple. But we have not advanced.
So again, irreducibly, except he just reduced it to a coaxial cable moving this way and this way that has capacitance and can explode and has a midpoint of something or other, a point of whatever the dopey midpoint was. Jargon, just rubbish, garbage, not a single real concept in any of this conversation, just all garbage.
Enough yet as humans to understand the fundamental principles of the way things work. Force and motion, inertia and acceleration, resistance, capacitance.
Yeah, more nonsense. Resistance, capacitance, none of that shit means anything. Okay, there's force and there's matter. The force moves the matter. There's no field until there's soldiers in it. There's no field until the corn grows. Without the force, there's nothing. The force is the field. The forces all move the speed of light, which indicates they're all the same thing. It's all the same force, and it's all in this form of little quantizable clumps of momentum. And that's what makes things move, because it's momentum.
Capacitance, permeability, and permittivity. It's just that simple. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later. Bye.
Well, so just a despicable character. Probably deserves many of these awards, so no doubt he'll get a few, maybe one a month, because he is a despicable purveyor of just absolute crap disguised as some form of science, which it is not. It is just religious junk. Okay, so enough of the video. So, till the next time, and such.